the first parikrama was done by Uddhav Maharaj under the as described in Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran, and he does it when Sri Krishna advises him to go and seek enlightenment from the Gopikas of Vraj, and that is when he does circumambulatory track of the entire Vraj Mandal. Akhanda Diya, I would say, used to burn on top of the temple, and it was this Akhanda Diya which caught the attention of Aurangzeb from Agra fort. And that is when he saw that this Diya was there and he was furious. And that is when he issued the farman to destroy the Katra Keshavdev and all temples of Vraj. 200 headless torsos of children of 10 years or less was lying. That was the propensity of the genocide that was perpetrated by Ahmed Shah Abdali. And namaste to all. Thank you, Sangam Talks. And to speak on today's topic, Braj Mandal, a timeless emotion, it's basically a very small and humble effort to educate everyone to share what Braj is all about. The very essence of sharing or coming to this topic is, when I see today most of the people who are visiting Braj are actually going into the New Vraj, where hardly anything resides, hardly the heritage places, the actual history which resides. They don't visit there. It all lies in the old Vrindavan, old other places around Braj Mandal, or in the museums which are there, the Mathura Museum for that matter. So from there, I thought that why don't we bring up with a few slides which will allow people to know the actual points where they should go when they're visiting, Vraj Mandal. So when I say Vraj Mandal, it's a huge area. I'm not referring to only Vrindavan as a city or only Mathura as a city, but the entire 84 crores Vraj, which is called as Vraj Mandal, and we will try to visit. It's basically a subject by itself, but I'll try to give you the key snippets, which I felt that should help you to understand the very ethos of Braj in a short span of time. So we will cover the geographical expanse of Braj, then Maharaj Vajranav and his exploits, the historicity of Braj, what it has gone through, the Sapta Devalaya, the key 7 temples of Braj as per Gauriya Vaishnavas. Why Gauriya Vaishnavas? We will touch upon that also. Although there are a lot of other sampradayas equally important, but Gauriyas, occupy the most important place, at least from a historicity point of view. And then a temple architecture with the Govind Dev Ji temple, Katra Keshavdev, or the Krishna Janmabhoomi as we know it today, what it underwent and what it was like, and festivities of Braj Mandal. Although there are lots of festivals, but to give you a fervor of the festivals of Braj, we will speak on Holi, of course, because Holi is something which is very unique to Vraj, and this 2.5 months long celebration which goes on, it is never seen in any part of Bharat for that matter. And then finally, the 84 crores Vraj Parikrama, from which the very concept of Parikrama, comes up. Today when we go to other sacred places or Teeths of Bharat, we see that Parikrama Marg is there, people doing Parikrama, but actually from where Parikrama started, we will try to touch upon that. So the geographical expanse, it is 84 crores, as we all know, which translates into 168 miles and 20 yojans, 20 yojan. And Braj Bhasa, which is, the Braj Bhasi's, mother tongue, is spoken over in today's context almost around in 38,000 square miles, as far as deep into MP in some places. And the boundary here, the boundary, when I say it, the boundary slightly differs here and there as per the Puranic text. And primarily Vishnu Puran, Harivansh Puran, Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran, Vara Puran, Skanda Puran, Bhavishya Puran, Garg Samhita, and Brahmand Puran are the key texts which gives the description of Vraj Mandal and its geographical expanse. And as you can see from this map or little drawing, it is a collation of many important places, starting from Vrindavan, Mathura, Nandgaon, Barsana, Gokul, Ramanreti, and Kamyavan and Radhakund, Shamkund, Chatikara, Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, of course. Rawal Gaon, Rawal is the place where Radha Rani was born, and not Barsana per se. Barsana she used to stay. Then lots of ones, and then of course Mahavan, Lohavan, and other ones. So it is these are the few names that I shared with you people to make you understand the expanse of Vraj for that matter. Moving on the geographical expanse, there are 12 major ones or forests. So it is, I mean, what we are trying to do, we are touching upon the natural heritage part of it, which is today a bit endangered, and lots of challenges with illegal mining, the land mafia, the rock cutting, all these stuff. I'll start from the first slide. So the geographical expanse, as I said, Maharaj Vajranath and his exploits, the historicity of Braj, how it has evolved over a period of time, what all key elements of history has gone through, the Sapta Devalayas and the temple architecture. So when we discuss on the temple architecture, we will pick up Govind Dev Ji temple, the most opulent temple, the most magnificent structure that was built in North India during that peak Islamic period, Katra Keshav Dev or the Krishna Janmabhoomi. People must know about Katra Keshav Dev, at least in few details, which I've tried to capture. And, it is the heart of Sanatan Dharma. The festivities of Rajmandal, although many festivals are there in Rajmandal, but we will pick up Holi as a festival to discuss in little depth with whatever time we are left with. And then, of course, the Chaurasi Crores Vraj Parikrama. So we all today, whenever we go to any Tirth of Bharat, we see that Parikrama Marg is there, or Parikrama, people are doing Parikrama. But from where Parikrama actually started, from Rajmandal Chaurasi Crores Parikrama, we are going to touch upon that. As I said that, the Chaurasi Crores expands with 168 miles, translates into 20 yojans, and the Braj Bhasha has been spoken over 38,000 square miles. The boundary of Braj finds mention, as I was mentioning, in Vishnu Puran, Harivansh Puran, Srimad Bhagavad Mahapuran, Vara Puran, Skanda Puran, Bhavishwa Puran, Garg Samhita, Brahmanda Puran. But the only one touch, we have to be mindful of, in each of these Puranic texts, slight mention of places are, differentiating here and there, And as you can see from the Brajmandal map, it is just not confined to Vrindavan as a city or Mathura as a city, but it is spread across a lot of places, starting from Giri Govardhan, Mathura, Kosi Kalan, Barsana, Gokul, Nandgaon, Giri Govardhan, Radhakund, Shamkund, and then, there are so many places, Mahavan for that matter, that is also another historical place. And then coming to a bit of the natural heritage, which is, of course, endangered today due to unlimited mining, deforestation, and, people, the land mafia getting into it. But the entire Vrajmandal comprises of 12 major vans, then 24 upavans, 12 prativans, 12 adivans. These are the natural heritages. The ones may slightly differ, as I said, slightly differ here and there as per Puranic text. So somewhere in Varapuran it might be one or two names here and there, and then in Bhavishya Puran it might be a little different. But primarily, if I go by all the text, it sums up to the formation of this. And then, of course, the plainlands, the hilly areas and Khadar areas are there. Giri Govardhan is there, and numerous kunds and sarovars. That is the natural heritage that I am talking about. Yamuna, of course, is flowing through. There is a Ganga canal, and as per Varapuran, Mathura, it is also called as Mathura Mandal. We have been, I have been mentioning the term Vraj Mandal, but it is also known as Mathura Mandal as per Varapuran, because if we look at Varapuran, Shatrughna, the younger brother of Sri Ram, Sri Shatrughna, had actually set up Mathura city after killing Lavanasur. And he was carrying with him two vigrahas of Vara avatar, the Shweta Vara and the Adi Vara, which are still give darshan in Mathura city. And these 6,000, 7,000 year old deities are still there, fortunately for us, but very few people know about it. And that is also one of the reasons why we are having this talk, to make people aware of what all points they should actually cover. In terms of, again, politically, the political map today, the Vrajmandal is spread between Uttar Pradesh, of course, Rajasthan, MP, and Haryana. So this four states actually comprise of the key heart of Brajmandal. Then we will go to Maharaj Vajranath. So typically, if we come across, there are many. Why Vrindavan? The name has been derived Vrindavan, but of course there are Puranic explanations as well. I will not get into the details of it because that's itself is a chapters and multiple subjects of discussion for that. So one of the reasons that we come across is Maharaj Vajranath, who was the great grandson of Sri Krishna of the Vrishni clan of Yadavas, was the key architect of Vrindavan or the behind the resurrection of Brajmandal. So it was named after him. Then there is another folklore saying that Vrindavan or the Brajmandal name derives from the fact that a lot of Vrinda trees or Tulsi trees are there. So that is also one of the reasons. But to understand a little bit more about Maharaj Vajranath, he was the son of Anirudh, who was the grandson of Pradyumna of the Vrishni clan and great grandson of Sri Krishna. So it is Sri Krishna, then Pradyumna's sons Anirudh, and then Anirudh's son Vajranath. So Anirudh was married to the daughter of Banasur, or by the name of Usha. So, as I said, as per Varam Puran, it is named as Mathura Mandal, and this Mathura Mandal was resurrected by Maharaj Vajranath in getting help from Maharshi Shandilya. We have come across the Shandilya Gotra for many of us. So Maharshi Shandilya was the person who helped Maharaj Vajranath to resurrect the Vrajmandal. And he did this with the inspiration from Samrat Yudhishthir. So when he started getting into the resurrection piece of it, we will come to this beautiful story a little later. So he basically created four, vigrahas. He created four vigrahas of four devs that we call Hardev, Baldev, Keshavdev, and Govinddev. So Keshavdev is the Sri Krishna Janmabhoomi that we know. Govinddev is the most important deity of the Gauryas, Radha Govindev ji, who now resides in Jaipur City Palace, but originally was in Vrindavan. And how he went there, we will touch upon that history also. Again, an effect of Islamic iconoclasm. All these deities, for that matter. Two Naths, Srinath. It is the same Srinath who is Srinath Ji of Nathwara that we know today, and Gopinath. And two Gopals, Madan Gopal. Madan Gopal is also known as, Radha Madan Mohan today, who resides in Karoli, and Sakshi Gopal, which is in Puri today, in today's world. So these were the eight key Sri Krishna deities that he made based on the various descriptions that he had listened as a 13-year-old, from his mother Usha, because Usha was the only person who was alive who had seen Sri Krishna with his own eyes. And this is the story that I'm giving you as per Srimad Bhagavad Mahapuran. And the most important part is the Maharaj Vajranath, when he created or sculpted these deities, he was only 13 years old. He was a master sculptor. And that's one of the probably the historic reasons which comes out that Mathura is the center, epicenter. Mathura became the epicenter of stone sculpting. So it all started from there. And that's one very important piece of information that we must retain with us. And before we go on to our next slides. So the historicity of Vraj, as I said, that it was recreated and resurrected by Vrajanath under the guidance of Parikshit and Maharshi Shandilya, and with also encouragement from Samrat Yudhishthir. Mathura Mandal, for that matter, saw a lot of effect of Buddhism and Jainism, and we can see from the history today what is available. If you go to the Mathura State Museum, there are 70% of the inventory of Mathura State Museum is either Buddhist or Jain, sculptures. So, and the reason behind this is historically Gautam Buddha with his disciples Kattayan and Upagupta had planted Buddhism in this land. The first Tirthankara, Rishabhnath, practiced Jainism himself. He came here himself, just like Buddha, in the Vrajmandal. And the 22nd Tirthankara, Neminath, was born in Vraj. Mathura, of course, because of all these reasons, the Buddhists also took to the sculpting to create various, Buddha statues. And even today, when the Yamuna flows, it creates mounds. Tila banate hai wo. वहां पे वो उसको मथुरा में they call it टीला. So there are a lot of tilas even available today which are not even excavated by ASI. And if you excavate these tilas, then obviously you can understand we will get hold of many other historical artifacts as well. And emergence or the presence of so much of inventory in terms of sculpting obviously points to the fact that Mathura did become the epicenter of sculpting. Braj Mandal, over history, over the last 2000 or 3000 years, I would say, has been nurtured by the Shungas, the Shakas, the Mauryas, the Guptas, and the Kushanas over the centuries. And that is why the famous headless torso statue of the great Kushan king Kanishka is still available in the Mathura State Museum. So, Mathura State Museum, and somebody is going to Mathura, should always pay a visit to Mathura State Museum. This entire the importance of this land can be easily understood by the fact that many travelers, eminent travelers, Megasthenes, Giwensang, Fayen, European travelers like Tavernier have visited and left account of, and vivid and detailed accounts of the various temples, the practices which are available over period of time which was practiced over by the people of Mathura or Braj Mandal for that matter on those days. The land has been plundered by the Huns. They were the first to plunder it around early 7th century. Ghaznis, Khiljis, Lodhis, and Mughals. And the later, apart from Huns, I think I don't need to tell anybody, Islamic iconoclasm, genocide. The descriptions which are available in the Persian and Arabic text are unimaginable. The kind of genocide they have perpetrated, the kind of destruction they have unleashed on this Punya Bhumi is phenomenal. And what we have lost can only be seen by the fact that what is remains in the Mathura State Museum is, reflection of what was there and what has been lost over a period of time. Then after all these iconoclasm effects, when Mathura Mandal was actually destroyed, it was into ruins, into jungles, came Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and during the peak of Bhakti movement in 15th century or early 16th century. And with his 6 Goswamis who recreated and resurrected, as a part of, during this Bhakti movement period, the entire Braj Mandal for that matter, they went on a spree to locate those places. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is considered as a reincarnation of Radha and Krishna combined, went on a spree to locate those deities, went on a spree to locate those key Leela Sthalis, resurrect the entire place, write the Vaishnav history, create a lot of text, get the people into the fold of Vaishnavism, revive Sanatan Dharma for that matter, and their contributions to Sanatan Dharma historically at a time when India was seeing the peak of Islamic iconoclasm as well as Islamic onslaught and people who have been converted at the behest of swords, they actually turned the tide around. The land has been visited by the greats of Vallabhacharya, Madhavacharya, Mirabai, Surdas, and many other saints. And even today, the Vrindavan town has the same small temple where Mirabai used to stay. Giri Govardhan has a place called, Parsoli, where the Samadhi of Surdas is there. Similarly, Vallabhacharya, Madhavacharya, they all came in over here numerous times, particularly Vallabhacharya. So we will now come into a very, very interesting story, the story of Sapta Devalaya. So Sapta Devalaya, Sapta means 7. And as you can see, the 7 temples, the name of the 7 temples I have mentioned. So this is the first and the key temple, the Govind Devji temple. Then these are all in Vrindavan city, in the old Vrindavan. And what classic architecture. Gopinathji temple and Madan Mohanji temple. So if you closely see it, I have mentioned the face, the torso, and the feet. These deities, these are the original deities, the 5,000-year-old deities, and they're made up of stones which are not available in today's earth. It is called Bajrakeet, and the name of the stone from which it was sculpted. And these stones, because of the speciality of these stones, which obviously this stone is not found in our on our planet Earth anymore, these deities look equally opulent even today, equally glazing, shining, and opulent even after 5,000 years. Not a single sign of wear and tear. And each of these temples have a wonderful history associated with them. And if you visit this structure physically, you will understand what I am talking about. And then there are the four other key temples in Vrajamandal of Sapta Devalaya: Radha Damodar Temple, Gokulananda Temple, Radha Raman Temple, and Radha Shamsundar Temple. So it's a huge history, but in the interest of time, I will limit my discussion to these three temples. And the story goes that how these deities were created. It's important to mention this story over here, which comes from Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran again. The 13-year-old Vajranav, after hearing the description of Sri Krishna, started sculpting three deities of Sri Krishna which would resemble him. I mean, he did not plan to create all the three deities. He wanted to create only one deity, but it so happened that when the first deity was made, his mother Usha told him that, it resembles his feet. So this was the deity which came up, Madan Mohanji or Madan Gopal as we know him. Then that second deity which he created, since it did not resemble, Gopinathji came up. A very beautiful deity. This is currently located in Purani Basti region of Jaipur city. And when Usha looked at it, she told that it matches the torso of Sri Krishna. And then finally Govind Dev Ji deity came up. And once this was created, it is mentioned that Usha, brought down her ghungat out of respect, because the deity's face was exactly how Sri Krishna looked. So it is believed in Gauriya Vaishnavism that Vaishnav Tattva, that if you visit or have a darshan of all these three deities in one single day, in a day, you have a Purna darshan of Sri Krishna. These deities were, as I said, started, the temple started coming up post 1570, because in 1570, the Mughal Emperor Akbar paid a visit with Raja Man Singh, his Mansabdar, Raja Man Singh, to Vrindavan. And after that, he gave kind of his approval to build four grand temples in Vrindavan, and out of red sandstone. All these temples are made out of red sandstone, and red sandstone during the Mughal times were used to build either the Mughal forts or their offices or key government structures. So Akbar agreed to give red sandstone for the construction of these temples. And the first temple to come up, of course, was Madan Mohanji, followed by Govind Dev Ji, and then Gopinath Ji. We will take, and when we go into the details of temple architecture, we will discuss Govind Dev Ji in little more details. And because the structure was a wonder, even today it is wonderful, in a depleted state. The flight of these deities, all these key deities of Gauriya Vaishnav Tattva, what Vajranav had created were in Vrindavan until 1669, 1670. And this is the same time when all the flight of deities took place, because Aurangzeb issued a farman to destroy the Katra Keshav Dev, or the Sri Krishna Janmabhoomi, and along with that fell all the temples of the Vraj Mandal, for that matter. So all these temples bore the brunt. Rajputs, who formed a key administrative team of the Mughals, had actually informed the press, and there are amazing stories of how these deities traveled through treacherous routes and then reached Jaipur over a span of next 3 to 4 decades. So, for example, the Govind Dev Ji, from Vrindavan to Jaipur, it took 44 years for Govind Dev Ji to reach, because they did not take him through the main route. Otherwise, the Mughals would have plundered the deity. The resilience, the sacrifices, the courage, the hardship, tears comes to my eyes when I read those stories, when I read those descriptions, how it was transported, how people saved, and wherever he went there, another temple came up in his honor. And those temples are even there today. It's amazing. And Dr. Meenakshi Jain, Padma Awardee, historian Dr. Meenakshi Jain, she covers these stories to a great extent, not in all the stories in so much of details, but to a great extent, in her book, Flight of Deities and Temples. So if you get a chance, do read these books because the flight of deities from Vraj, the mass flight, I would say, the mass flight, all these deities went out of Vraj in 1669-70. It has been covered in a book very aptly, although not much in great details, but to a reasonable extent, because that book speaks of the other flights, like the flight of Sri Jagannath, also from the Jagannath temple, for that matter. And he flew out so many times. So, as I said, in architecture, we will take Govind Dev Ji temple, who is considered the Maharaj of Vraj. And firstly, this was a 7-story architecture. The Mughals reduced it to 3-story. There are many folklores and legends that how they stopped destructing. And after destroying, Aurangzeb got a mazar built on top of this destroyed temple and on the top of the 3rd floor, so that people can climb up and offer their prayers in the mazar. That's what they used to do with so many of our places. And then in 1861, F.C. Grouse, the British collector who was the collector of Mathura, removed that mazar on top of this opulent structure. So, and that is captured in his own memoirs, the Memoirs of Mathura by F.C. Grouse. So that is another important part of history that we come to know. The image was excavated by Sri Rup Goswami, one of the key 6 Goswamis of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, somewhere between 1525 to 1536. It was a yogi Shakti Peeth of Yog Maya Devi. So one of the Devi Vigrahas which Vajranav had created. I did not touch upon that part purposely because that's another part of story or the history for that matter. And the hillock from which it came out is called Gomatila. Now, there's a beautiful, this piece of history is extremely beautiful, because the way it was discovered from Gomatila, Rup Goswami was searching for Govind Dev Ji as per instruction of Sri Chaitanya, and he was searching everywhere, but he was not getting any information. So one day he sat down beside Yamuna and he was crying in despair. Then from somewhere, a Gop Valak, a cowherd boy, appears in front of him from nowhere, black complexion, around 13, 14 years of age, and says that, I have seen a tila where Guy and the cows go and shed their milk over there every day. So you should go and check there. I think you can, get this thing. And then he disappeared. In a fraction of a second, Rup Goswami understood who he was, and he ran to Gomatila. And he located Gomatila and called the Vrajavasis with all kinds of excavating material, and they excavated, and then came up the beautiful deity of Govind Dev Ji. The first temple, or a temporary shed, I would say, was put in place by Maharaj Bhagwant Singh, father of Man Singh, in 1561. And the current architecture that you see, which was built and commissioned by Raja Man Singh with help from Mughal Emperor Akbar, and was conceived in 1565. The temple was commissioned in 1590, which was the 34th year of Akbar's reign. And I know many people may not like because I'm mentioning Akbar, but there are Mughal farmans. There was a Mughal farman on the temple, which describes who had built this, how many bighas of land were given in name of the temple, how the red sandstone. There are proper inscriptions available today. And this is documented history, archaeological evidence based on which this history has been done, and this has been vetted by all historians and archaeologists. So please don't feel bad about it. And the flight of deities, as I mentioned, they all moved down in 1669-70. There is a Vrinda Devi Vigraha, which was also built by Vajranath, whose temple is also there in this premises. And the temple took almost 12 years of construction. And in one word, even today, to describe the temple, is poetry on stone. That's an architectural marble. As you can see, the inscription on the temples states the commissioning, the donation, the details of the sculptors and the architects who commissioned the temple. It was a 7-story temple, a huge one, and the most opulent structure that was built in those 600 to 700 years of Islamic rule which North India went through. The only temple which came up actually of such opulence, and 7-story brought down to 3-story by the Mughals. And again, some of the, it's a Rajput Gharana, mix of Rajput Gharana, where you see the jharokas, the open arcades, the pointed arches, the vaulted domes. And if you can see the pictures, you can understand what I'm speaking about. There was a 150 kg diya, which was always Akhanda diya, I would say, used to burn on top of the temple. And it was this Akhanda diya which caught the attention of Aurangzeb from Agra fort. And that is when he saw that this diya was there, and he was furious. And that is when he issued the farman to destroy the Katra Keshav Dev and all temples of Vraj. As I said, the Mazar was removed in 1861 CE by F.C. Grouse, the district collector of Mathura, from the temple top. Currently, this temple is ASI protected, and as I said, that 44 years through treacherous route from Vrindavan to Jaipur. So in Jaipur, it was first there in what we say that there was a separate temple built up in Jaipur, which is called Kanak Vrindavan, or from Kanak Vrindavan, it moved to the Jaipur City Palace. And he is Govind Dev Ji is now the Nagar Devta or Ishta Devta of Jaipur. So if you go to Jaipur and do visit Jaipur City Palace to have a darshan of Govind Dev Ji. And as I said, that these pictures are speaking for itself, and such opulence. And it's an Indo-Islamic style. And because if you see these arches, these are the Islamic arches typically that you see. And but majority of the temple, apart from these arches, are all Nagara style of architecture of Bharatiya temple traditions. And the mix of the jharokas, which you typically see in Rajasthan, the jharokas, the open arcades, this arches you can see. And this is a beautiful inside view that I have captured, of course. And as you can see, F.C. Grouse rightly defined it as the most impressive edifice of Hindu art that has ever been produced, at least in Upper India. And that is what I was saying, that the most opulent structure to come up on the 600, 700 years of Islamic rule over in North India. Coming to the Katra Keshav Dev or Sri Krishna Janmabhoomi, this is the current structure or the current picture that you see. A little bit of history or historicity on Krishna Janmabhoomi. The first structure, as I mentioned, was brought up by Vajranav, Maharaj Vajranav in 3000 BCE. The second structure of the temple was built by Chandragupta Vikramaditya of the Guptas in 400 CE, and this was destroyed by Mahmud of Ghazni in 1071 CE. And I will come to little in the next slide that what Ghazni's historians are writing about Mathura and the destruction, and you can understand what we are speaking of. And it is this structure which has found its mention by Huensang in his text in the 7th century CE, because Huensang had visited it. The third structure, as per copper plates discovered from the site during excavation, mentions of a third structure which was brought by Maharaj Jajja, Jat ruler of the Vijaypal Deva, within 100 years of destruction by Mahmud of Ghazni. Again, this temple was desecrated by Sikandar Lodi around 1520 CE, and this temple was visited by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Vallabhacharya. So, and the final or the fourth structure which Aurangzeb brought down was built by Maharaja Veer Singh Bundela of Bundelkhand or Orcha. And Veer Singh Bundela ji had donated 81 tons of gold to this structure in making this structure. And since he was a very good friend of Jahangir, so it was built under the patronage of Jahangir. And again, an opulent structure of red sandstone, which obviously cannot be found today, and finds as mention of a few British and French travelers like Tavernier, as I said. And each of these finds are supported by archaeological evidences, manuscripts, ancient texts, and as late as the findings by Alexander Cunningham, the first director of Archaeological Survey of India, and by F.C. Grouse, of course. See, if anybody is interested to understand in greater details the Sri Krishna Janmabhoomi, they should read the book of Dr. Meenakshi Jain, Vasudev Krishna and Mathura. So let's get into the description of what Ghazni destroyed. In the words of Udbi, the court historian of Sabakti Jin was a Mahmud of Ghazni's family, his forefather, and Udbi traveled with Ghazni, Mahmud of Ghazni, to Mathura. And as mentioned, and before I do that, it will be very pertinent to mention that the Marxist historians referred a lot of history, lot of data points from the Persian and Arabic texts, but they surprisingly go silent whenever these Islamic marauders have actually suffered a loss. And there is a parallel reference to that being found in the inscriptions or manuscripts available. Let's say for Nafsari inscription, Aihole inscription. There's so many inscriptions. I mean, these two are the premise where Pulakesi defeats Gori, I think, if I correctly remember. Yeah. So, and then in what did they say? That this line, that he, means Mahmud of Ghazni, sees a building of exquisite structure which the inhabitants declared to be the handiwork of not of men but of jinn. They mention it's jinn, but people, they used to say that devtaon ne banaya hai. Then the second one, on the two sides of the city were thousands of irons with bars of iron. And what does the Sultan say? The Sultan writes that if anyone wished to construct a building equal to it, he would not be able to do so without expending 100 million dinars, and the work would occupy 200 years. Let me tell you that even the descriptions which are found of the last temple which Aurangzeb brought down, built up by Orcha's king, Maharaj Bundela. The statue of Sri Krishna was 15 feet tall with sapphires, red sapphires as his eyes, that kind of descriptions are found. So I will not spend much time over here because it's going to get lengthy, because the descriptions are extremely extremely heart-wrenching, I would say, and one cannot keep his emotions under check when you go through them. And of course, the genocides perpetrated was unimaginable. As late as Abdali in 1757, even he committed a genocide. We'll come to that also. The magnificent structure, as I said, was mentioned by Chinese traveler Huensang, who traveled across India and was especially and when we visited during Harshavardhan, Kannauj of, the king of Kannauj, present-day Kurukshetra. So before going into this, on the genocides perpetrated, I will just quote one example. As late as 1757, before the Third Battle of Panipat, every winter Ahmed Shah Abdali used to visit India. And in one of those in 1757, when the Battle of Gokul happened, Gokul was saved by the Naga Sadhus, and after getting defeated, the Durrani forces being defeated by the Naga Sadhus and their valor, they fell upon the unsuspecting people of Vrindavan on the day of Holi, when everybody was celebrating. Pilgrims, residents, children, all playing. Nobody had an inkling of such an attack. And the Afghan forces fell on these unsuspecting civilians. They butchered them. The Yamuna was red. And if I read the descriptions mentioned in Tariq-e-Firishta by another Persian historian, Firishta, and there are some other Persian texts also. I don't remember the names, but I've gone through. They say that there was a place where 200 headless torsos of children of 10 years or less was lying. That was the propensity of the genocide that was perpetrated by Ahmed Shah Abdali's forces. Yeah, there are. I mean, in terms of utsavs or festivities, many, starting from Janmashtami, Radhashtami, Damodar, the Kartik month. Each one of them is is very celebrated in a big way. But to me, I think Holi is something which I thought that I should share with people. This one, as I said, there are some 5-6 elements which make it special. Holi starts from the day of Vasant Panchami, so which makes it a typical of 2 months affair, 2.5 months affair in Brajmandal. And what are the, apart from the normal Holi, the different ones which are there and which people should know as a part of their heritage is Phulo Ka Holi, Gulal Kund Ka Holi, where Holi never stops, the Latmar Holi, ancient sign of women empowerment, I can say, and then Falin Ka Holi, Falin, where Holika Dahan. I'll tell you the story in little details, and there's Dauji's Huranga. So we'll start with, and then of course, this one, the Charukala Nritya. So Mukharai's Charukala Nritya. So we'll start with Mukharai's Charukala Nritya. So Mukharai was the maternal grandmother of Sri Radharani, and it is said that when Radharani's birth came over, and she was so happy that she danced with a cart wheel, bullock cart wheel with lamps placed on it on her head. And over a period of time, this form of art or performing art, I would say performing heritage art, became a tradition in Brajmandal, and now it is known as Mukharai's Charukala Nritya. Okay, where women, as you can see, place their heads on the top of the heads. It's balancing with diyas, and they dance around during this time. Phulo Ka Holi, where it's celebrated with flowers all across Braj. I'm not getting into too much of detail in the interest of time. And Gulal Kund Ka Holi, where Sri Krishna and Radharani did not want to stop playing Holi, and there's a kund there where Holi is played throughout the year, it is believed. So it's called Gulal Kund Ka Holi. Then Dauji's Huranga. Now, if you can recollect, one of the key deities made by Vajranath was the Baldev, and the Baldev deity is probably one of those last deities which still survives, and and is in Brajmandal. So it is located in a village called Baldev, 10 kilometers from Mathura, and Holi there is rephrased as Huranga. So the men play Holi in a little rough way, and that's how it is being placed, and that's how it is known as Dauji's Huranga. Falin is a village in Mathura district where the Holika Dahan is observed by the local priest. So the current day local priest, I think his name is Monu Panda, and he goes on a fasting for 1 month ahead of Holika Dahan, and he's reading the scriptures, he's doing sankirtan, he's having only sattvic food, rather I think on falahar pe rehte hai, and doing bhajan and kirtans. And then on that final day he runs through a 15-feet fire kund of fire, as you can see from the picture, and trust me, nothing happens to him. So he reenacts the act of Prahlad Maharaj. Latmar Holi is played primarily in Nandgaon and Barsana, primarily in Barsana, then followed by Nandgaon, where the women take a lot of pride in beating up their males. And I think that's a lot of chaos around this place on those days. A lot of color riot. And believe me, Holi in so much of various dimension is not played anywhere in Bharat. So, and Holi itself is, Braj is the birthplace of Holi. So all these snippets that I shared with you in terms of Holi are probably not even 5% of what is there, and each of them has a very detailed history for which I will need hours to together, and episodes are different to just discuss on Holi. So this is what I wanted to cover in terms of the festivities. And before I close the festivities part, I think it would be very apt to say that having a darshan of Vraj in Damodar month or Kartik month, which is the most important and most auspicious and most favorite month of Sri Krishna, is something all of you should do. Anybody who's visiting Braj, I think that's the best time to do. Let us then come to the last part of our presentation, the Braj 84 Crores Yatra. This is the Yatra mark, the Parikrama mark that is seen, and you can see it passes through so many villages and so many places. So 84 crores Braj Parikrama, 300 miles circumambulatory track. So the first parikrama was done by Uddhav Maharaj as described in Srimad Bhagavad Mahapuran, And he does it when Sri Krishna advises him to go and seek enlightenment from the Gopikas of Vraj, and that is when he does circumambulatory track of the entire Rajmandal. Apart from that, there are other Puranic references where Narad Muni has to do one circumambulatory. He does it. Once Brahma does it. So there are a lot of other, references in the Puranic text. So I will not get into all those, each of those stories. In the present day, in the form that we see today, that was reconstructed and popularized by Sri Chaitanya and his 6 Goswamis during Bhakti movement. And in fact, just to share with you, Sanatan Goswami, the senior most person, used to go on a parikrama of 21 miles to Giri Govardhan every day, 21 kilometers of Giri Govardhan every day, do Madhukari, and then come back and have his food. That is how, these Goswamis popularized the parikrama by themselves, setting examples. The parikrama was also undertaken by Vallabhacharya, the first, or the person, or the sadhu, the great man who brought the Pushti Margis into existence. There are 3 routes for doing parikrama. One is an outer route that you saw in the picture, and there are 2 inner routes also. The parikramas assume a big shape during the Damodar month, the Vasant Utsav or Phag Utsav or Holi, Akshay Tritiya, Janmashtami and Radhashtami. Giri Govardhan Parikrama finds special mention in many temples of Vraj. You will see a Govardhan Shila, or a piece of from the Govardhan mountain. They place it, and if you go 4 times around that parikrama, do a parikrama of the almost the entire Rajmandal Parikrama, the 84 Crores Vaj Parikrama. It's around 300 kilometers of circumambulatory trek, as I was mentioning. So, with this, I will come to an end of my presentation today. And over to you.
I have 2 questions. One is that we had a talk by Meenakshi Jain about the flight of deities, and you mentioned that. And she especially mentioned the long route that this deity took to, I think, Gujarat. Finally, it landed.
All these deities, most of these deities are in Rajasthan today. And few of them, as a part of my research that I have found out, few of them are in, one of them is in MP, and the other is in UP. I mean, the deities which could be located actually, because Katra Keshavdev, the original deity of which Bajranath had created of the Krishna Janmabhoomi, that could not be found today. So we assume that this was destroyed by the Huns or anybody. But let's say, for example, as I shared with you people, Govind Dev Ji, Gopinath Ji, Madan Mohan Ji, then Srinath. And there was another deity and another key temple which I have not covered, but it was also under the approval of Akbar, also a red sandstone structure and a very important structure, and again preserved by ASI directly and not under the UP State Archaeology Department, is the Jugal Kishore temple. So the Jugal Kishore deity is in Panna in MP. And the Haridev deity, which was actually located in Giri Govardhan, the original temple in Giri Govardhan. So Haridev deity is now in Kanpur district in a remote village. So all these deities, the ones which were blessed to have the blessings of the Maharajas, particularly of the Shekhawati Rajputs or the other Jaipur rulers, have a proper temple. And to that extent, let me just quickly share a story with you, small story, a little bit of sad story also, that Maharana Raj Singh of the Sisodia dynasty, Mewar, Maharana Rana Pratap's lineage. He fought a battle with Aurangzeb again in 1670 when the flight of deities happened. So Srinathji was in Govardhan. Srinathji came out from Govardhan. He was excavated by Madhavendra Puri, the guru of Nityanand. And he was also known as Govardhandari Gopal because the deity is, as he's lifting the Govardhan. That was how Maharaj Vajranath created him, to commemorate the Giri Govardhan episode where Krishna holds Govardhan in his index. So that deity was in Govardhan, and it moved to Nathwara. When it reached Nathwara, the Mughal forces were chasing it, and Maharana Raj Singh said to the Goswamis who had taken, Srinathji over there, that जब तक मेरे 1 लाख राजपूत जिंदा है तब तक औरंगजेब को हाथ नहीं लगाने दूंगा. And the Rathors of Mehrangarh Fort, the Rathors joined hands with the Sisodias, and a huge and a very bloody battle happened in Natwara, okay, on the outskirts of Udaipur city. So today, if you go to Udaipur, you'll have to travel 20 kilometers on the highway and then reach Natwara. And it is on an elevated top. The temple is on an elevated top. So उसके जो नीचे का जो हिस्सा है उस जमीन पे वो संघर्ष हुआ था. And you won't believe, and this is how history has been distorted, 40,000 Mughals were butchered. 40,000 Mughals were butchered, and some 20,000 Rajputs, Rathors and Mewaris laid down their lives. And that backward step that Aurangzeb took, he never came back. And if you look at the Samadhi of Maharana Raj Singh today, it is so sad to look at that. You go to Aurangabad and see how Aurangzeb's Samadhi is there, and you look at Maharana Raj Singh, how his Samadhi is. That's the difference.
Thank you. That's a wonderful story. I think it was also, some of these stories were covered by Dr. Omendu.
Yes, Omendra Ratnu. Yeah, he has covered that. But let me tell you, these stories, surprisingly, Omendra ji has written it now, but these history has been documented by Cornel Todd in his Annals and Antiquities of Rajasthan. So I met Dr. Ratnu yesterday only. Yesterday only I met Dr. Ratnu. He's a good friend of mine, and we were discussing. And he wanted me to come up with a book on Kurukshetra as well, and on Dwarika, excavations on Dwarika. So Cornel Todd covers this entire episode in so much of details that Dr. Ratnu himself said that he has just retold that story today. And later, and much prior to that, also there was another historian, local Rajasthani historian, Kaviraj Shamaldas. He came out with a book called Veer Vinod. So this episode is captured with the local folklores and legends in Veer Vinod. And trust me, Aparna ji, even if you go to Rajasthan today, or to Mewar for that matter, the land of Mewar, I can tell you these details because I am a researcher on Mewar. So the folklores and legends that even recite today, they should be a part of our history books, but unfortunately those are not documented. And हमारी सनातन सभ्यता में भारत में एक प्रथा है जो वो by mouth, जवानों से इतिहास travel होते आ रहे हैं. And those parts of history should be documented now for the benefit of our future generations and to arise the fervor of nationalism in us.
My next part of the question was about this. I have been to जो 4 धाम है मेवाड़ के, उनमें से एक है चारभुजा नाथ in Gadbor, which is about 90 kilometers from Udaipur. And I have stayed there for a while, about a month I lived there. And the story goes that one shepherd brought this murti from Vrindavan और उसको यहाँ पे स्थापित किया. But later I discovered that they were part of, what she calls flight of deities. They were taken there as protection. So
you're right, Aparna ji, because you see what has happened. The protection of the deities has happened in some form or the other. So when they move from Vraj, or even for Jagannath Puri, when the deities of Jagannath, Balabhadra and Subhadra moves, they are moved by the priests, actually. The same Brahmins who are targeted in today's world, and as I said during my talk, the resilience, the courage, the sacrifice, the hardships they have faced in taking those deities, protecting them through the jungles, on bullock carts, through boats, crossing the rivers. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. If you can see my talk on Sangam Talks only on Jagannath Puri, the second episode that I had covered that in details, because Dr. Jain, to be fair to her, she has covered a part of it. But when you look at 18 invasions on Jagannath Puri and the number of times that deities have moved, come in and come out, is phenomenal. And each of those stories are, wonderful. And as you rightly said, some cowherd shepherd had carried it. The Brahmavastu of Jagannath, Mahaprabhu Jagannath, was, saved inside a khol, mridang, and then transported out. That is how the Brahmavastu got saved by a Vaishnav called Vishir Mohanty. And similarly, I'm not surprised when I hear that cowherd boy came. There has been so much of individual contributions. There has been so much of hardships, resilience, sacrifices done to save our dharma. That is why they exist today, and that is why we get it. It did not survive because it didn't survive by its own. It is because our forefathers made those sacrifices. Imagine Nathwara would not have been there. The Pushti Margis, Srinathji is the key deity of the Pushti Margis. Govind Dev Ji is the key deity of the Gauriya Vaishnavas. They would not have been survived if those shelters were not given, if those sacrifices were not given. Were not, those hardships were not faced by those priests, primarily the priests. If you look at Radharaman, the one of those key original deities surviving in Braj, he was put inside a well and then later on taken out. Each of those have wonderful stories, and Vraj is full of those stories. Primarily, Vraj and Jagannath Puri are the epicenters of this flight of deities and temples. I would have loved to do another episode on Govind Dev Ji, but the history of Govind Dev Ji is astounding, I would say. Astounding.
One last question, then you can go to Radhika ji.
Sure.
This parikrama that you talk about, the Vraj Chaurasi, is around 275 kilometers.
I said
But
300
I have
kilometers
only heard
approximately.
about Govardhan Parikrama, which you can do in a night.
So our Aparna ji, Govardhan Parikrama is a part of Vraj Chaurasi Cross Parikrama. So if you go to Giri Govardhan, that is a 21 or 22 kilometers circumambulatory track, and when you do Braj Parikrama, it comes inside that. So and when you go around Giri Govardhan, there are so many pious places. The Samadhi of Surdas is there. You will have to cross that. You have to cross Jatipura, one of the places that I mentioned, Jatipura, where Srinathji's original temple is there, where Srinathji Vigrah was actually there. So he traveled from Jatipura to Nathwara. Then Radhakund, Shyamkund is there. So and on the day of Bahulashtami, there's so much of rush in Radhakund, because that is the day when Sri Krishna was granted the permission to go for grazing, for taking his cows to grazing as a cowherd shepherd, by Nanda Baba. So those are the various places associated with history.
I'm so happy to have attended this session today, because exactly a month back I was in Vraj Mandal. I had been there on a Vraj Mandal Yatra, and I was there right throughout that holy period there. And,
wonderful.
Unbelievable, the holy fervor there. It was like the whole of India has come there to celebrate Holi.
Yeah.
So I could relate to all the facts and all that you have mentioned in your talk. It was very exhilarating for me. And I stayed exactly opposite the Govind Dev Mandir. So I had a darshan of Govind Dev Ji every day. And you said that Govind Dev Ji ended up in Jaipur. But there is a Govind Dev Ji in that temple.
It is, so as per our research. No, he didn't come back. So each of these, so what happened, as per our research and research findings, these three key deities, Govind Dev Ji, Gopinath Ji, and Madan Mohan Ji, in 1770, after all their original temples were desecrated, the Vigrahas had moved out of Vrindavan. A zamindar from Bengal, Nand Kumar Bose, in 1770, constructed replacement temples in memory of these deities and brought up these deities. Now, these temples that you see today, let's say for Govind Dev Ji, the new temple is at the backyard. I'm sure you have visited that. So that was made by Nand Kumar Bose. Similarly, in Gopinath Ji, you see another new temple. Similarly, in Madan Mohan Ji also, you see another temple. These were all built in 1770. So even they are 250 to 300 years old now. And the Vigrahas, which you say, as per our research, it says those were the Utsav Vigrahas. You see what happens if you see any Tirtha today in Bharat, be it Jagannath Puri, be it Tirupati, be it Rameshwaram, be it Ujjain Mahakal, or anybody, the main deity doesn't come out of the Garbhagriha. There is a Utsav deity or a Pratibhu Vigraha, who comes out. So, as per our findings, I think these are the Utsav Vigrahas, which were recovered somehow or had survived during Aurangzeb's onslaught. And these were the deities which were reinstalled or reinstated as main Vigrahas in Vraj by Nand Kumar Bose.
A couple of questions, if I may. One is that I was staying, I said opposite to Govind Dev Ji. So that is that Ranganath Rangaji temple, which is built there. But you didn't touch that probably because it is not part of that Krishna Leela Stali. Probably
No,
this
not
temple
that
has
way.
come up much later.
No, Radhika ji, there are documented 5,000 temples and surviving 1,000 temples, and many of those temples have. Each of these temples have wonderful history. I did not touch upon the Mirabai's temple also. I did not touch upon Sudama Kutir also. I did not touch upon Radharaman temple also, or even Nidhivan or Baki Bihari ji. Baki Bihari ji has a lot of history because it speaks of Swami Haridas, who was the guru of Tansen and Baiju Bawra. Baiju Bawra is a famous film in Indian history. So, and Baiju Bawra was a real character. You know, one of them singing Rag Malhar and the other one singing Rag Bhairavi. So one hand diyas lit up and the other person sings and brings rains down, and these are actually part of history and Akbar's 9 gems. So even Baki Bihari ji I did not touch upon, and it has got a lot of history into it. So it's actually, as I said, 1 hour is very short time for me to cover all these aspects. And Rangji, yes, that is the only Dravidian architecture, temple architecture, Bharatiya temple architecture of Dravidian style, which is available in entire Braj Mandal, which was built up by 2 traders, I think, 2 businessmen. Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't it Rag Deepak? That's what I have heard.
No, it is Rag Malhar and Rag Bhairavi.
Okay. And I asked you specifically about Rangaji Mandir because I am from Srirangam, where the original Ranganath Ji is there, and Brahmotsavam Utsavam is going on here right now.
Then you must see this. This Utsavam comes up with the Utsav deities. The original deity does not come out of the Garbhagriha, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
So that's how you can relate.
There was a chord resonating with all that when you said that the deities were saved by the devotees and so much of sacrifice. The same thing has been repeated here also. We have a very famous book on that, Ranga Ula, which talks about how this Ranganathji was taken from Srirangam to so many places, even to Mysore and Karnataka and all that. And tens of thousands of Vaishnavites, they sacrificed their lives, gave up their lives only to save this Ranganathji deity.
Absolutely.
And after so many decades, he came back.
Absolutely. I'll tell you a story, and it will be very pertinent and linked to the subject. This story dates back to the attack of Mahmud of Ghaznavi in 1021. In 1021, if I correctly remember the year, Ghaznavi, after looting Somnath, I think that was his 6th or 7th time, looting Somnath, is going back to Ghaznavi, and for going back, he hires 2 Brahmins from the city of Somnath to show him the way through the desert, because he has to cross the Ran of Kutch. After traveling for many days, they find that they have landed up in the middle of the desert. So he calls these people and says that, what are you guys up to? And this has been documented by the Persian historians. These are documented by Persian historians, Arabic historians like Tariq Firishta, like Udbi, or even Al-Biruni. And they say that you destroyed Somnath. So we have come here to sacrifice ourselves, and we have deliberately brought you to this desert, in the middle of this desert, where your army and you will perish. So obviously, immediately these 2 Brahmins are beheaded, and Ghazni somehow reaches his kingdom with more than 50% of his forces wiped out. Or even if you see the battles for each of the battles for Somnath, 50,000, 60,000 people have laid down their lives in each of the times. So it's the same story, ma'am, everywhere. since we are discussing Vraj, I thought it will be pertinent to give the references of Somnath or to Jagannath Puri for that matter. And it's amazing, actually, these stories. This actually, every time that you go through these pieces of history, it reminds you of, as I said, that Dharma did not survive. Sanatan Dharma did not survive. Sanatan Dharma, to survive, calls for sacrifices, calls for resilience, calls for hardships, which we don't do today. We fight amongst ourselves. Yesterday, I was attending a seminar on Hindu Jagriti where Dr. Amendra Ratnu and the Jaipur Dialogues team was there, and we were discussing that the Islamics or the Abrahamic religions, they have a certain portion of their incomes to be devoted every month from their income for the purpose of dharma or purpose of their religion, but we don't have anything. And sadly, so many Hindus I see around me, so many who are busy in making their own wealth, and there is lack of community feeling, there is lack of giving, and it's amazing. We don't do it. We don't realize the importance, and that is what this seminar was trying to focus continuously on, that why this is required now, and this is the time.
Yeah, but Dan has a very important place. Whenever there is a yatra, we have Dan Punya. You go to a kshetra, then there Danam is a very, very important aspect of kshetra Tanam.
The problem is, ma'am, you are absolutely right, but we have forgotten those dharmic lessons.
Yeah, and maybe it is not an organized way for the religion. Each person does the Danam as per his will and wish.
We should do.
Well, anyway,
we should
yes.
do, but but today the problem is we don't do at all. We don't engage at all.
So very happy to have listened to your talk, and now I think I must visit Braj Mandal again in the light of today's talk, and probably if there is going to be a continuity of this, a few more sessions, I would like to listen to all of them and have a fresh look at Braj Mandal in another yatra. Thank you so much.
So I have given my contacts, and we work for an organization called Brihat, and you can contact Brihat because I work with Brihat, and our heritage walks on Braj Mandal are conducted by Brihat, where I am the heritage leader, walk leader. So, and we do it in a very systematic way, covering the the Puranic history, the political and military history, the architecture, covering the natural heritages, and having prasadams in key temples, having Aarti Darshan of Keshi Ghat, Yamuna Aarti, and there's so many things that we do for the people to make it more interesting. It's all inclusive. It's just not temples. It's just not an Aarti, but all-inclusive flavor.
Two minor questions. One, when we Google Brihat, it says Brihat Investments, Brihat Solutions, Brihat Finance. So what is the full name of the organization?
Brihat Anveshi. Brihat Anveshi. You can get in touch with Tanya. She can lead you to Brihat contact people. So Raghav ji or Pankaj Saxena, they are the senior most folks there. So you can touch base with Tanya. She can place you to the right people over there.
Pankaj Saxena, I know, yes.
Yeah.
And two, when you mentioned Srinath ji and the battle, who was the Mughal
Aurangzeb.
king?
Aurangzeb. So if you see between 1664 to 1670, this is the 6 years or 7 year span when Aurangzeb unleashed his horrible, iconoclasm just for iconoclasm. He attacked all temples during this time. He attacked Kashi. So two battles of Kashi happened, 1664, 1669. So 1664, the Naga Sadhus won. Kashi was saved. 1669, they couldn't save it. Naga Sadhus, 20 to 30,000 Naga Sadhus sacrificed their lives. And this is the same time when Braj Mandal was attacked. This is the same time when Aurangzeb passed orders for attacking and desecrating Jagannath temple also. But that is a very important story, that how he was fooled by the Subedar of Bengal.
So this is 1664 to
1670.
1670.
This is the 6-7 years when he goes on an onslaught and goes after each and every key teethers of Hindus, actually.
Right. And what Radhika Lakshmi ji was saying about Dan and how it is important and all, and how we Hindus are kind of careless about it. Radhika ji, I'd like to mention Tariq Fateh. He was asked this question that why do you speak so much in favor of Hindus when they themselves don't speak? So he says, oh, Hindus, Indians, उनका तो उनको बस ये होता है मेरा बेटा एमबीए कर ले, मेरा बेटा पास हो जाए. That's their scope of vision. That's about it.
Yes. That's why I said the thought of community feeling is lacking. Swadharma and Shatrubodh, ये दोनों का बड़ा अभाव है.
Last comment. Just yesterday, I had a very long discussion or debate with someone, a close friend, about this. I was telling her that Abrahamic religions offer you a community where you belong. So there is this great sense of security which women especially need. In Hinduism there is no such thing. But in Hinduism, the kind of freedom you have, each member of a family may be following a different guru, and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
but she, like very old friend, she has these strong leftist leanings. She says, so that is important. We need to belong. We need to have somebody look out for us. So what you said, because it's like one parish you'll go to always. One.
I don't know if you have come across this, Aparnaji. Hanuman, Bhagwan Hanuman says that as a householder, as a simple householder, you don't have to go to the temple, you don't have to do any danam, anything. But Sanatan Dharma is such that as a householder, if you do your daily course in a honest and simple way, in a sincere way, even that is sufficient. That is what Bhagwan Krishna says in Gita, Karma Yug. That hey Bharat, तुम कर्म करो. कर्म योग से भी तुम्हारा मुक्ति हो सकता है. कर्म योगी बनो. He says to, कर्म योगी bano. And that is what he, in all his avatars, you see Krishna or Sri Ram, have gone through so much of hardships. Sri Ram has gone through so much of hardship. Can we imagine in today's world sitting in the comfort of our home to go and walk through Dandakaranya? We can't, right? We can't think of going and staying for 1 week in a tier 2 or a tier 3 city. Forget Dandakaranya. So their lives itself are examples of what we should follow. That is what they set examples by themselves.